Hello, welcome to the Industry Idiots podcast. Turns out you're listening to last week's episode. You can listen to today's episode if you head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/industryidiots. For supporting, you'll get it a week early and access to one Patreon exclusive episode each month. Either way, thank you and enjoy this episode. Bye!
Hello, here's a new episode.
Hi Sven!
A new episode for you. Hello Sam, how you doing?
Got assaulted today, but don't want to talk about it on the podcast. I'm fine, I'm alive. It's all good. That's what you live through if you're in Berlin, I guess. Just normal.
The usual Berlin stuff, yeah, nice.
Just randomly getting sucker punched, it's totally normal. All right.
Jesus. I hope you're all right, dude.
It's part of life. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm still standing, and I've been in my fair share of scrappings or scraps, so it doesn't matter. All right, but what's happening in your life?
A little bit isolation, but also trying to get outdoors as much as possible, to be honest, because all the home office is alone, of course, with the necessary distance. Because staying at home and doing home office all days a week is like kind of taking a little toll psychologically, because I'm an office person, like to have people around me when I'm working, stuff like that. And that's a way to get outside is taking my camera with me and taking some photos of the current outdoor situation.
Yeah, I saw them on your Instagram. I think it's interesting, to say the least. I walked past a little shop today where you could buy like used stuff, and they had a mask in their display which was €5, and they said doesn't work anyway. And I
still tried to sell it.
Yeah, it was more of a social commentary, I think. Classic Berlin people, whatever. But what's been happening in the game scene? Let's have a look-see, eh? So there was
just...
Yes, Sven, yeah?
Yeah, it's just the usual workers getting a little bit fucked over by companies and corporations. I don't know if you heard it, the Gearbox situation. Oh, yeah. That's a big move, mate.
How's it still happening, dude? What, for everyone not initiated or didn't hear the news, the Borderlands 3 developers, who are very successful. I mean, the game is very successful. They're making a lot of money. There was a Kotaku report from Jason Schreier, and they are getting stiffed on bonuses, right?
Yes. I mean, normally, I think if I recall it correctly from the article, they have like a situation with a 60-40% quota, where like 60% of the earnings of the whole game get back into the company, and 40% are being distributed among all the developers, which, like, having revenue sharing among all the people is a very nice thing to have. But the bad thing in this situation is that all of the developers are getting compensated below the average salary level you have in the US. So these people are really dependent on the game being a success to like get the compensation for their work, which they probably deserve. And now, like, Borderlands 3 is a huge success, and they're not getting paid as much because the game cost more and took longer than expected. And then, of course, the small people are getting, how do you say it? Instead of the management, the small people are taking a hit for, the usual stuff.
The usual stuff, but wasn't there like an outrageous quote from the head of the company? Something like, who doesn't like it can leave, or whatever?
Yeah, something in that fashion. That's crazy. He just told his most valuable assets, the developers, making the stuff that's like creating the revenue, tell them to fuck off. Like, in which world are you living, dude?
I mean, that's the problem with privately owned companies. So Gearbox is still privately owned, so they haven't gone to any markets or shares or whatever. It's just they own it. And of course, then management can do whatever they want, especially in the lax US employment laws. In Germany, it's a different case because employees are extremely protected by the law, and of course there's also abuse, but it's super rare. And with Gearbox and what they have been pulling, that's only possible because it's a privately owned US company.
I mean, it's a different situation if your game underperforms and it has been like the deal from the start. Okay, you know what you get for signing stuff like that. But they say, 2K said, like, this game has sold record numbers, even more than Borderlands 2 did at the start. So where does this come from? No, naturally you would think, okay, selling more has a higher revenue and stuff, and then higher profits as well. But yeah.
Don't forget that Randy Pitchford fucking
get the pitchforks out. Yeah.
Get the pitchforks out. Yes, for Randy Pitchford. He gave himself a $12 million bonus in 2016. Which video game company CEO needs $12 million in cash, dude? I don't know.
I mean, that's just the usual side bonus they all get, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it is okay. I mean, there's a reason why someone is in that level in a company. So natural progression should also yield more rewards. If you spend 30, 20, whatever years in a company, you should have bigger bonuses and bigger payouts and to reward your loyalty, to reward your work. But on the other hand, and your seniority and experience level, of course. But on the other hand, and it's a little bit like soccer players or whatever, is $12 million bonus really necessary? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, depends if the market is warranting it, I guess. I mean, there's also another factor, which would be like the responsibility these people have in these high positions, because they make these big decisions that result in millions of costs or millions of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And for having this stress and responsibility, you're getting that high of a compensation. But I think having compensation in the millions is like a little bit too much. Even, I mean, you can have all the responsibility in the world, but still getting paid millions for decisions. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's just hypothetically, is that the right word? Let's just say that they make the most successful game of all time. I think currently that's Minecraft or whatever. And they sell a lot of units. And then if he wants to give out an insane payout to every employee, which of course scales with your share in the company or whatever position you have, then dude, yeah, sure, go for it. Give yourself 12 million, but also adequately give the other employees in the company a fitting payout. Doesn't have to be $1 million for a normal dev. That makes no sense, but I'm saying must be in context.
Which can happen if this model works, which they have been using. I think the article also says that some employees had so high of a bonus that they were able to afford houses from the revenue share. Like Borderlands 2 was such a monumental success over the years with all the DLCs and season pass and stuff. And it performed like super well, and people were able to buy whatever they wanted. So it's crazy.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, that's pretty dope. Yeah, well, of course, as all the big companies, is not 100% transparent and always take all the news you see with a grain of salt. And I don't think it's time to raise pitchforks yet for any studio at the moment, but just, stay level-headed. And of course, chasing the dream is all of our goals, and we want to be at the same place. But on the other hand, everyone wants to be treated fairly. So
that's a good point. Yeah,
keep an eye on the current topics, the hot topics, I would say.
Yeah, the shitstorm is called off.
Yeah, shitstorm is called off for now.
For now,
there was some releases this week. We already talked about Doom Eternal, right? They hit 100K concurrent players, 3 times the ones of the last one, but we don't need to talk about Doom again, I would say. But there was another release,
which you have been excited about.
Yes,
a little bit, at least, since Gamescom and your very great verdict.
And I
can remember.
Oh man, I want to think about it. I'm currently laughing because I'm reading Sven's notes that we're tracking what's going on in the world in our own document, and sometimes funny puns make it into the documents. And I'm just reading here: mount you mental success, because of course the game we're talking about is Mountain Blade Bannerlord, which is the to set the picture for someone who has not played Mountain Blade Warband, the first one, which came out I think 7 or 8 years ago.
2011.
Yep, fantastic game. Yeah. Okay, it's a great game. It's like a sandbox RPG kind of thing. You can download a shit ton of mods, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and then the game actually plays like that. And you start out the game, and the character creation is very similar to something like Dungeons and Dragons. So you create a character and you pick where in society you stand, like a farmer's boy, or are you a soldier in the army, or a general, or do you live at the king's court? And from that on, the world develops and builds around you. So, of course, naturally, a sandbox like this lends itself to fantastic mods and gathers a lot of hardcore fans, for sure.
That might be the reason for the success, right?
Yeah, the crazy hype.
I mean, it took, how long did it take? I think they announced it in sometime 2012, a year after our Warband got released, and then...
Development was 7 years, and it's a Turkish studio. So there's been tumult, crazy stuff going down in the country. So it's okay, right? That everything takes a little longer sometimes, but still 7 years.
But it's impressive that the company survived as long without actually publishing something since 2000, I don't know, 13, 14? The last DLC for Warband came out, and then you take 6 years and are still also, I think, private rerun. The newest Mountain Blade, they also published themselves. So it's a crazy endeavor spending so much time on a game that is now only, to put it in perspective, in early access. So they still plan on working on the game, but from the figures I saw today, it's like, I think, upwards of 75,000 reviews on Steam already. And that's like way more than the first one ever had in its first 5 years of being published. So I think the total after 8 years of being published from the first Warband was like 90,000 reviews. And the second one already has 75,000 after like a week or half a week. So that's absolutely insane how successful this release was.
Yeah, but it's also a little bit like the Duke Nukem phenomenon, right? The longer a game takes, the more shrouded and mysterious it gets if it's going to live up to the amount of time that was spent developing it. And why is it being delayed? All these kind of questions. And I met some of the developers on last year's Gamescom when you could still go to events physically. And they were amazing.
Good times.
I said them hi. I knew some of them, and we chatted with them, and then we got to play an early prototype of the game. And they gifted us a T-shirt and a USB stick. It was very cool. But the game back then was still very bare bone. So I was a little surprised because it had less systems to offer than the original one.
I think that is also the main critique point it is receiving right now, because the most professional reviews I read about the game, I haven't played it yet, they also say it doesn't offer much more than Warband does. It all looks a little bit nicer. The UI is now up to date. It doesn't look like a game from 2000 anymore. So it all got a little bit more polished and looks a little bit more professional, not like a mod from the start, if you know what I mean. And yeah, let's see how they can take this game if they actually spend another year or two in the early access phase on it to make it better.
Yeah, as long as all the systems are supported and everything is there, it's still, I know but it's still open for mods, and that's what counts, right? It's much like the Bethesda games. What you love about the Skyrim series or Fallout or whatever is that you can add super cool scenarios, new missions, spells, and whatever into the game and enhance the experience to your liking. And the better the sandbox and cooler the mechanics, the easier that is possible, of course.
So in a way, it makes sense that I spend so much time working on a very, very solid foundation and getting all the systems right, which they now can build upon and like create this playing field, this sandbox for the people to do their own mods in. Do you know if they have like official mod support or something, or mod tools?
I know that the old one had official mod support. I don't know about the new one. I have not checked it out, but I am sure the developers know about how important success was linked, or how closely success was linked to mod support, and I'm sure they have also have mod support implemented in a new one.
I think it's nowadays one of the easiest ways to create a dedicated fan base if you provide mod tools, and then this own little ecosystem is being created where like a bunch of super dedicated fans keep a game alive for sometimes decades, and then new forms of games spawn out of it. Best examples, Dota, or even like the Battle Royale games coming from the Arma mod.
Yeah,
or even DayZ being a mod itself.
There was an Arma 2 mod called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Right? Was it that name?
I think it was PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale. I'm not sure. But it was a mod before. True. It was a standalone.
Yeah, and that's how that came to be. And then, of course, the Warcraft 3 mod that was Defense of the Ancients, which is now the monumental success that is Dota. And then, of course, built on top of Dota, there was League of Legends. They built their entire game around Dota. And then they became monumentally successful. And that makes a lot of sense in general, that you're open and allowing people to use the tools you've built to create new things, because this just enhances and vitalizes the scene and gaming in general, and allows growth.
I absolutely agree. It's just a crazy picture in the gaming world right now. The games that are being played the most are all coming from mods. Fortnite Battle Royale, PUBG Battle Royale, Counter-Strike was a mod, Dota 2 was a mod, League of Legends stem from a mod. They all, like the most played games right now, haven't been like original ideas straight from like some development studio. The concepts all came from mods. So it's unbelievably cool to see that like fan creations have such a huge impact on the gaming world.
And why is that? Because game designing and game development is an iterative process. So the longer and the more people iterate on something, the higher the chance of... It's very hard to pinpoint fun in game development. And no one sat down and on paper designed fun. And he like writing it down and then realizing, yes, when someone touches this will be fun. Never happened, never will, because fun is something that develops from the gameplay and from the process of making the game. So it makes a lot of sense that you build something solid and people use those constraints, because constraints breed creativity. Use those given tools to make something that they were thinking about, something super fun out of it through lots of testing. And then you get something new that is amazing, hopefully.
Sometimes the magic happens when you create something like Counter-Strike and it gets the worldwide #1 monumental success. That's in like the best case scenario. But I think no modder is going in there with the intention of creating the next big thing. I mean, most of the time it's just like some explorative trying around with the tools, or I can do this and I can do that. And maybe if you were feeling comfortable with the overall tool set and stuff, it can get something bigger. Even make standalone games, like for Skyrim, the Enderol modding project, which is like so big, it's like 30 or 40 hours of content just as a free mod for Skyrim. It's like so cool what sometimes stems out of small ideas, which start in like humble beginnings and then get so big in that context.
Yeah, there was another Skyrim mod that I played called The Forgotten City, and it won a Writers Guild Award, because the Australian one, as far as I know, because it was written so well. And this just shows how awesome it is that you can, because the guy who built this mod probably I'm just assuming he could be an amazing game designer, developer, probably doesn't know how to handle an engine himself. Or of course, he could learn it, but at that point, he probably didn't, because if he's that good a writer, he's probably focused on writing. And to be given a tool set where you're able to use that tool set, so that engine's capabilities to make your thoughts and writings and dreams a reality, I think this is exactly what making games should be about. I mean, that's why the game scene is so different from the other competitive scenes, because you encourage each other and encourage sharing and just getting smarter in the collective.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think modding must be, for any developer who's out there, like what a starting point was for their careers. Like a lot of people I talk to who are in the games industry have started out with mods, and mods have also been the stuff that made me fall into love with the creative process behind creating content, like trying out what you can do with a tool set. And back in the day, I have to think, what was the first one I've used? I think for Star Wars Republic Commando, so it's an Unreal Engine 2 game. I played I played around with the level editor a lot, and that was so incredibly fun to. Of course, in the beginning, all the levels you made were trash, but we were super proud of what you made. Like, there were a bunch of hallways and boxes connected to each other, and it wasn't so special, but it was cool. You were proud of it, and then with each creation you made, with each map or each little modification you created, and then you always got better. And at some points, you're getting really professional in a sense, even though you're still a modder.
That's how learning works, right? The only way to become authentically confident and experienced and skilled in your profession, or proficient in your hobby or whatever you're doing, is by failing. That's the only way. And through trying and trying and trying is the only way to become a, in your case, level designer that I don't know, like, doesn't fail as often. I mean, the only thing you're doing through iteration and trying and trying and trying is up your cool, reduce the amounts of missteps you're doing, and gain knowledge, of course, and then knowledge, and then you
knowledge.
Yeah, and you also build Counter-Strike maps, right?
Oh, yeah, I have been doing that. Yeah, but to pick up on your point of failing, I think that never stops when you create something. You never stop failing. The important thing for me is just that you don't stay blindfolded. No, don't stay blind to what could be done differently, and don't ignore any feedback you get. And sometimes when you create something, you get so protective of what you did that you are not as easily receptive of feedback. You get a little bit protective about the stuff. And then you can't see what can be improved of the overall thing you've been created. So as long as you always have an open mind about that stuff can still be better than where it's actually at right now, then you can always improve your stuff.
And we've all gone through this. I mean, I'm sure everyone listening right now has had a moment in his life where they created something and someone said something about it, and then you were getting defensive. I sure as hell have. But the more feedback you look at or read and put into reality and use, I think the more receptive and open-minded you become for feedback. And if I think back about projects that I did 2 or 3 years ago, where I was still inexperienced and I pushed out something and then I was super protective about it, that has changed, because feedback can only do one thing. It can only help you. If you choose to disregard it, or if you choose to implement it, or whatever you do with it, doesn't matter, as long as you accept that feedback is a valuable form of improving whatever you're doing. And so are we doing it with the podcast. I mean, we frequently get comments from you guys, and we improve in the areas. Shout out to Anna, who wrote us a very big feedback, and shout out to Kalle out there, who's a Twitch streamer, Echo, who gave us a lot of feedback, and it's always appreciated. And please keep doing that, guys, out there.
It's always interesting to to hear and read the stories of where these people who listen to us are actually consuming their stuff, where they're listening to the episode. Anna, for example, listened to it like until 4 a.m. in the morning, she wrote in her feedback, and
So
Kalle was
cool.
listening to it on a long road trip towards some other city in Germany and listened to it in the car.
Which opened, because he was listening to it in the car, and we test listen, of course, on our setups here at home, and this makes us completely oblivious to the fact that our baseline that was slightly elevated, so for a more pleasant experience, if you have a monitor setup, a high quality setup, we did not take into account that if you would listen to it on in a car radio, or for example, it's fine on the big Alexa, but if you have the little one in your bathroom or whatever, then that also has just too much bass to even understand what's going on. And so through your feedback, we get to improve organically, and thank you very much. Yeah, keep that up, please, guys.
Keep that up, yeah. It only makes this experience better. And to build on the feedback thing, there was one thing Kalle also said where he complained a little bit about our discussion in one specific part where we talked about Escape from Tarkov. And he specifically remembered one part where you called the game a battle royale, which he vehemently declined. It would not be a battle royale.
I know, survival.
It's more of a hardcore survival thing, a looter RPG thing. So we stand corrected, but yeah.
Yeah, we're open for that, of course, always. And we always answer viewer questions or listener questions, as you guys know. And yeah, and also if you write us a funny iTunes review, hopefully with a lot of stars, we will read it on the show if it makes us laugh. If it makes one of us laugh, we'll shout you out and read your review on the podcast, of course.
With a funny noise?
No funny noises, no jingles. But no
jingles, okay.
This is supposed to be laid back. So let's jump back into the current, what's happening in the games world, or what we want to talk about.
Discussion.
I wrote down here that I wanted to talk about, was 3 weeks ago, there was a character released for Mortal Kombat. I don't actively play Mortal Kombat, but it sparked a longing in me. Because the Spawn character, a very famous comic that I love and I've read since I was a kid, I read all the issues, and it's Spawn. And why is there no cool Spawn video game? We have an abundance of Iron Mans and Spider-Mans or Spider-Men, but we do not have Spawn anywhere. And Spawn is so awesome and so brutal.
Okay, you have to tell me why Spawn is awesome, because I've never read a Spawn comic or seen a Spawn TV show or any excerpt about Spawn, because I think it's a super niche hero or villain. I don't even know if it's a hero or a villain, so please tell me who Spawn is.
Now you already know who Spawn is. He's neither. The thing is, I don't want to spoil anything, so guys, please go read the comics. But what is so interesting about Spawn's world is it has he's this, think Punisher, but demonic, and then you have these planes of hell, and it gets super brutal with some astral angels, and it's very brutal. It's just amazing, guys. Read the comics. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think this is very just like a good Green Lantern game. Definitely missing. You know?
Oh, Green Lantern. I still have PTSD from the movie. Jesus Christ. There was a CGI fest.
Do you not think it kickstarted Ryan Reynolds' career? Come on.
Of course it kickstarted his career. No, this was the single reason why they casted him as Deadpool, of course. Because his charismatic performance in a green screen suit.
No, but I think that kind of stuff, I mean, those are two different comic universes, of course, but and definitely different age groups. But I think games like Control or Prototype, was it called Prototype, the game back then? With the
open world New York thing where this pandemic also happened, and you played this mutant thing who could rip apart a bunch of people. It was Prototype.
That kind of game for someone like Spawn or Punisher would work extremely well. Or you could also go super gritty, gory, in-your-face story or something Doom-like. But I don't want them to clone anything. But or the Batman series, right? With the fantastic combat. But I do understand that it's maybe too close. Maybe these kind of superheroes are too close or super villains or gray area guys are too close in terms of their personality to fully make different games of.
Would you rather have an open world Spawn game like Insomniac Spider-Man, or rather a more linear experience like the Arkham games? Oh, well, Arkham also got a little bit open world later on, I think. Arkham City. But the first one was kind of linear, even though having these aerials which are interconnected.
Since Spawn's worlds are so interesting, right? Going into the planes of hell and meeting all these demon lords and whatever, and also with the Angel Council and that kind of stuff, and the fighting. It's not really fighting crime since he's an asshole, but I don't know. You gotta read it. But what I mean is this lends itself to Dark Souls style world building, right? That you dive into this world and you try to find things out without it being shoved down your throat. So
sounds a lot like a love child between the Spider-Man game and Doom.
If that's possible, I mean,
that's possible a little bit.
Why not? Fusing genres, always fun.
Maybe you should go to Insomniac and hey guys, I have a Spawn game idea. Let's do it.
Doesn't fit into their portfolio. I don't think they have 18 plus games, and Spawn does not work below 18 age level.
Isn't the latest Spider-Man 18 plus, or is it 12-ish? I'm not even sure because I think there's violence in there.
Also, you're thinking about USK, right? I don't think.
Oh yeah, the German rating system. True.
Yeah, the states are not using. Other states using PEGI?
Apart from the US, you mean?
No, I think I know that PEGI is isn't it a British rating system?
It's the rating system in the US, the only one they use,
okay.
I think. And I'm not sure, but I think the UK also uses it, but also has an individual one. I often enough see like boxes in the store where they use the local one and the PEGI ratings thing next to each other. So they like have 2 age ratings, which sometimes are different, which is kind of weird when a game is like 16 plus and then the other rating is teen. So, which happens.
Spider-Man is 16 in PEGI and it's 12 in USK in Germany. Funnily enough.
They actually lowered it in German in compared to international standards.
Never happens. I know.
How is this possible?
You guys have to know internationally, the German rating system is usually very strict. Sometimes I see a lot of complaints online about if there's sex in a game, it's going to have a shitty PEGI rating system because the American market is very sensitive to sex in video games or nudity.
Yeah.
And it's the other way around here in Europe, especially here in Germany. Sex is not as important or nudity in games, but violence is. So it's just the other way around. If something is more focused on violence, you're gonna have a hard time, especially if it uses, icons from Germany's past.
Oh yeah, that's the reason why the Wolfenstein games needed to be like from art assets wise, and a lot of UI stuff had to be changed, which is a crazy thing to imagine, that a whole production needs to make different versions of a game just because one country tells you, okay, this symbol doesn't align with our constitution and our laws, so switch it out.
But Sven, you're forgetting China. Don't forget China's rules that there can be no skeletons in any games. So
skeletons or skulls?
Skeletons. If you play World of Warcraft in China, there is no, like, if you play the Forsaken, which is an undead race, which is skeletons, they have flesh in the Chinese version. And
what?
For a game that has a lot of skull decor in things like Naxxramas and all that, dude, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy. And this game goes for all games. If you want to have realistic gore, you got to make your own version for China.
Oh yeah, I think I read lot of stuff regarding that for other multiplayer games who try to launch in China, like Rainbow Six and Counter-Strike. They had to readjust their operator skins and their graffitis you could use in-game to comply with Chinese ethical and cultural demands from the government in order to be released there. So it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And what else happened? There was something with Dreams, that there was, again, with protection of IPs. Before we go to that, I want to say something to the mods we talked about earlier and to the natural extension of games that I just remembered. Don't monetize your modding scene, please. Whoever studio is listening.
Damn, yeah.
With the Bethesda knows that they can leave their game, which is okay. They have this established, routine. They can leave their games in a semi-unfinished state, and modders will take care of it, which is, of course, a dick move, maybe. But it does free up assets and free up resources. So, but then trying to capitalize and monetize that mod scene is, that's just roguish. That's thieving.
Capitalizing on other people's work. I mean, of course, they are using your software, your tool set. They are using your assets, and sometimes also maybe, of course, not sometimes, like most of the time, of course, they're using your code as well, because all the systems and stuff. But the creation you do with the tool set is something that also falls under some kind of intellectual property. So you, of course, on one hand, you have everything, all the tools that are copyrighted and all the stuff you are using to create something, and then the creation itself also being on a different level of being a copyright situation.
Yeah, and with that, we dive into the topic, which is Nintendo going after creations in the Dreams game, if that's a game, that is the PlayStation game that lets you create games. So it's like a very user-friendly game engine. And people are recreating Nintendo games inside of that game or inside of that engine. And now Nintendo is going after those people, or is it going after Sony?
No, it's going after the people who create these experiences. I mean, it's not, most of the time, it's still very accessible for non-game developers to create playable experiences in there, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice to get familiar with the toolset. And the beta has been out for quite a while now. So there are a lot of creations on the marketplace, and people can do basically whatever they want with this, because it's like the literal sandbox. You can create what you want. But then they start creating, of course, stuff they already know. And there has been like a SpongeBob mini game. And from all the other IPs you can imagine, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario has been recreated, even with the exact same aesthetics, the coins bouncing in the little world, the cartoony graphic and stuff. They really trying to emulate what Nintendo has been created. So I can understand why Nintendo is going after these people in a sense, because they want to protect their brand, and they don't want to have something out there that looks like Mario but isn't from authorized by Nintendo. But as long as these people not offer it commercially to other people, I don't see a reason why they should sanction or sue these people to make them stop creating stuff with Nintendo characters.
Well, as long as they're not stealing the literal character model and re-rigging it or whatever, and then through that make weird sex experiences.
Oh man, I think that gets moderated anyhow.
Okay, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully.
I don't know. As long as, the average Jack who's at home and making a Mario clone for his children doesn't get subpoenaed and sued, I think it's fine. All right. And what else was there? I wanted to say something about... Well, Sea of Thieves, a game I love to play. There was this... we had this thought and this discussion many times when I was sitting in the office, and Nico is right next to me, and he's very pro Sony, pro PlayStation, pro console exclusivity, and I'm very anti-exclusivity. I'm 100% supporting that every game should be on every platform possible. And there should be like a hardware should not be sold because it has exclusivity to content, except if that content can literally only be played there. Let's say VR, right? A VR game makes sense that it does not come from my Nintendo Switch, which I do not have. But but with Sony and their exclusivity stuff they're doing with releasing games only there and then promoting the new console with that exclusivity, I think that's in my opinion not an ethical thing anymore. Back in the day maybe, but not anymore.
Okay, so I can see that this is frustrating for people who don't own consoles and don't want to spend money on having a very expensive gaming system in the form of a desktop PC, and then next to it are required to also have a console to play the latest exclusives, because it gets insanely expensive if you want to maintain in or keep up to date in both worlds. So that is super frustrating, of course. But it is one of the only reasons and the biggest triggers, or like, let's say, hooks for people to get these consoles, the content, the creations. And what do these hardware manufacturers need to do, in your opinion, to like be attractive enough to be purchased if they are not the exclusive platform for that one game you want to play?
But that's where we are different in terms of how we understand for me personally, the reason why people buy a console is not because of exclusivity, or should not be. For me, the reason is because I also have consoles. I used to have a lot of consoles and a PC. And there's two things that bother me about this. First of all, I want to experience the game in its optimal form. So if I get a game that's very dependent on quick movement, like a shooter or anything like that, I want to play it on my PC because I can get 144 hertz, I can get more field of view, more processing power to just make the game run smoother. But on the other hand, I'd be fine with playing Witcher or something that's about exploration and chilling back on a console. And the thing is, why people buy consoles is because you can just go into your next Walmart and buy the console. And the console you bought there in the Walmart on a whim without any prior research will be just as good as someone who has spent the entire month researching new consoles and then ordering it online. And I think that's the main appeal. You buy something and it's guaranteed to be that.
And it's guaranteed to be up to date for at least the current generation, like at least 4 to 5, or even in this, I think last generation is now 6 years. The PS3 even was 7 years, I think, until the PS4 got released. So you only have to make this one 300 or 400 or whatever tier you want to purchase by decision, and then you're set for several years. And on the other hand, if you want to keep up with the highest desktop gaming capabilities, get the latest NVIDIA GeForce 2000 whatever, with the latest RTX and stuff, of course you can even spend alone on your graphics card, on your GPU card, at least 600 euros to be up to date. So that's the price point is an insanely good argument, especially if you, I don't know, have a family and want to enable your kids to play, and then maybe you have 2 or 3 kids, you can't buy them a full gaming rig, each of them. Like, who can afford that?
Yeah, and finally, I think companies are starting to realize this. They're starting to realize that if the amount of money that we lose, like the amount of console sales that we lose from removing exclusivity, is not worth more money than they gain from selling that game on all platforms. And for me, as a gamer and developer, this is fantastic. I want to be able to play, and companies are doing it. For example, Death Stranding is coming for PC. We have Sony titles coming to PC, like Horizon Zero Dawn, right?
Oh yeah.
Even though Horizon will not have an FPS field of view slider on the PC, which is, of course, a disaster. But
a disaster. Sam is enraged.
They are coming. They are coming for PC.
Yeah. I mean, Horizon is a great title to put on PC. I mean, these huge open world games, or these very polished big AAA experiences who require a lot of processing power. are made for PC in that sense. So you put them on there and elevate their fidelity and the quality to an even higher level. And of course, another convenient thing I just remembered or just thought of when having computer games is the loading times. This was especially noticeable in the latest Star Wars thing, which is a Souls-like. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, you die a lot, and then you have to wait a minute or two until you can retry. And this whole game loop is based around retrying and figuring out the stuff. And I think it's even the same way if you play Dark Souls and the Souls games on PS4 as well. You have to spend a lot of time in loading screens when you die, which can be frustrating. But thankfully, the new consoles are having SSDs in there. At least that's what they promise. Let's see how much of an improvement that can be for the consumer side. Of course, it's a big step up for developers who can, of course, profit off from the new memory capabilities and stuff like that. So I'm really intrigued.
I'm still an advocate for, because as a developer, you enjoy having this closed-off ecosystem because you know exactly what kind of hardware you are developing your game for and what kind of shaders and drivers and which cards and what's in that thing essentially. So you can build your game to have an optimal performance around that, and you don't have to accommodate hundreds of systems. But on the other hand, you want to reach all the gamers with your experience that you're doing, and you put a lot of heart into what you're doing. So systems like the Xbox Game Pass, I was a very happy man when they announced that on the E3 a couple of years ago that every single game that will ever come out on Xbox will also come out on PC. And it's fantastic. So I have the Xbox Game Pass, and what that is, it's a subscription like Netflix, and you can play all of their games that are Microsoft related while you're having this subscription for, I don't know, $12 or something, and you can play them all infinitely. And that's awesome. Of course, it's only awesome. Yeah.
I think it's even more than just the Microsoft titles. I think they have a very big catalog by now. Not only the Microsoft Game Studios exclusive, which are now like 30 studios. So they bought a lot of developers to facilitate their kind of, how they call it. It's not an exclusives program, but like their content program, basically.
And that is also with the Xbox Game Pass. That becomes a problem later on, of course, when people start doing exclusivity here. It's like Netflix. When Netflix became big when they stopped sending out DVDs and became big online, it was awesome. But now we have Amazon Prime, we have HBO, we have all these other systems that you need because they all have exclusivity contracts with their individual shows. And now it's super expensive to watch all the shows you want to watch. And I see this happening, of course. This will be the future of game subscription services as well. And the big problem is if they ever release games that are only available in subscription systems, which is currently not the case. There's not a single game, but I see this danger. If someone says, all right, we can sell consoles of exclusive games, why don't we make a game that you literally cannot buy and can only play if you have our subscription? And if all of them do this, then we are, as consumers, we are fucked.
Oh yeah, definitely. Having the choice to where and how to play a game, of course, is always something you want as a consumer. But the factor of where you play your game is also something that probably influences your decision of getting a console or desktop PC or even subscribing to Stadia or something. If anybody's subscribed to Stadia, I don't know anybody because it just doesn't work with the German infrastructure. I mean, of course, Google's developing it in Silicon Valley and they have super fancy internet everywhere. And of course, the developers might be a little bit biased of the fact that there is like super nice internet available everywhere where you can actually stream high definition and 4K content on your device. But in 95% of Germany, this service won't work with the current infrastructure. And of course, Germany is not the only country. I'm sure in France, Spain, or the UK, there are a lot of regions where you can't have something like Stadia. But the original point I wanted to make was that the reason why you buy a console is of where you are using it and how you are using it. So if you're having a PS4 at your home, you can just pick up this console and bring it over to a friend. You're not picking up your whole gaming PC rig and bringing it over to a friend. Also, you are connecting it to your TV and then sitting on the couch with a controller file way, not having to use multiple peripherals like the keyboard or the mouse, and just being in a laid-back manner. Of course, if you set up your gaming PC right with a wireless Xbox controller or something like that, you can achieve the same thing. But the convenience factor, adding on top of what you mentioned before with just only needing to buy one thing per generation, is like the biggest selling point, the convenience factor.
Yeah, definitely ease of access and everything related to it. And I see that appeal as well. But this again opens something for me. If I am someone who is hardcore into gaming and I would be willing to spend more money, why can I not buy a console that is specifically tailored for, let's use that term, that hardcore players? Why? I know there's the PlayStation Pro and then Xbox versions
Xbox
now.
One X, yes.
But they're not insane enough. If I want to buy a console, I want to have the highest quality possible. If I'm a human like that. So why can I not buy a console that costs $1,000 or more, or whatever your level of quality you want to achieve, and have that for the dedicated hardcore crowd, so they don't have to do the PC thing anymore and can also go back into the console market? I don't see no harm in that.
There's no harm in that, only like an additional struggle, I'd say, for the developer side, because you have to account for one more system. And you always have one target main platform when you develop for a game. Like one thing you set out, okay, we want to reach this standard, the system can fulfill this amount of power, we can raise the bar this high. And if you are taking this most premium system as this is the bar we are raising, then the game can't be on the others. So naturally your market will be much smaller and you won't sell as much. So that's probably I can imagine one of the reasons why there isn't a console that is in the price range of 800, 900 euros. Because like spending so much money only on gaming and entertainment hasn't much of a worth for these hardware manufacturers, I'd say.
And also, players like us or like me are not their main market. If 90% of their players don't care and literally just want to spend a few $100 to play on the couch, then so be it, right? And
we're already on PC.
Yeah, because we are already in the PC bubble, and we wouldn't want to go away anyway. But we've talked a lot about console exclusivity, but now there was this big uproar over the last year with the platform exclusivity, especially when Epic started buying exclusive games that only came into the Epic Store. Even though no one is actually hurt by this, because it's just another launch you have to install, you always have to think about the consequences. What happens if this with the subscription model, or you have to pay to get into this launcher? What happens when they change the system, when they have all these exclusive things and then they change the system so you have to pay to get access to them, for example? And that would, of course, be predatory. So it's great to see that, for example, Sea of Thieves, a game I enjoy playing with my friends, is now also coming to Steam and dropping out of their exclusivity thing. Same with Age of Empires, who many people we know didn't buy because it was exclusive to the Microsoft or Xbox store.
I mean, generally, I agree with you that it's nice that the games come to different stores, but when it's done in a fashion, especially for a multiplayer game, best example, when we tried to play Dead by Daylight recently, and you had only access through it via the Xbox Game Pass, and I already owned it on Steam, and we weren't able to play together because we didn't use the out-of-game service which was provided by either the Xbox application or the Steam thing, because the matchmaking were running over this system. Then, for example, it's a very undesirable situation for the consumer because you can't play with your friends even though you own the game, which has been done really flawlessly in my mind by the Borderlands situation, because they introduced the system. Borderlands 3 also was an Epic Games exclusive last year and just now launched on Steam. And they, on top of the matchmaking you can use over the Epic Games client or the Steam client, they have this network called Shift Matchmaking, and you create an account in-game on top of the existing launcher matchmaking situation, and then you can still play with your friends who own it on a different platform. Yeah.
But that puts more pressure on the developer, because then you can't use the integrated things that Steam or Epic offer you. And a lot of their networking and APIs, you have to build your own infrastructure that can utilize them connect them.
Which not all developers can afford to make, because who has a lot of backend programmers?
Yeah.
For a rarity.
Dude, especially game specialized programmers in that specific niche. Oh my God, very hard to come by.
Very hard to come by, yeah. Getting back to the Epic point, there's one thing or one opinion I have about it, is that I don't really see as much of a problem of one game being only there, but I don't want to have this game there just because one company spent a lot of money on getting the exclusive rights. I want the game to be at the store, at the place that has the best features themselves. Of course, Steam has like a 10 or 15 years advantage of having all these community features and all these different shop features. But a year ago, the Epic Games launcher was so bare bones, you could do nothing with it. You had your games there and that's it. And of course, if you already have like 200 or 300 games at one account, ideally you want to have everything in one place and not have the struggle of using 4 or 5 different launchers, the Uplay, Origin, Steam, whatnot, Battle.net, of course, also. And the Epic Games launcher totally failed in the beginning to provide a user experience from a launcher and shop perspective that would warrant the games being there exclusively.
Yeah, like reviews. Reviews need to be...
Like reviews, yeah.
Yeah. True.
Or just the basic stuff, getting recommendations or some wish listing stuff or having a purchase history. I think by now that's all stuff they have implemented, because also takes time to create a launcher like that sustains this huge demand in network capabilities they now need to provide, because of all the free games. People now have like 100 games in their, how do you say it? In their library. And now people actually are using the launcher, despite the launcher still being a lesser product than Steam. And in my mind, the product who is better should like be the place where developers want their product to also be on, and not the exclusivity thing.
Yeah, it's also from a developer perspective, exclusivity contracts are not a bad thing because you get paid. It's super hard to finance your development. You have to find a publisher, you have to find a funding board, you have to find anything that believes in you, believes in your game, that gives you money to make your game without you being indebted forever. So you need something that takes a risk on you, and having a store pay you $400K for 1.5 years of development with an indie team is amazing. And then if the only downside is that, okay, I give them their cut, and their cut is very fair, it's fairer than Steam's, and if that's the only downside I have to pay, that my game will only be on their store, I can totally see why developers would opt for that. And I don't think they're assholes because they do it.
Oh, that's a fair point. If they are like acting as a publisher in that sense, which they do when they give you like take full responsibility of the project funding and stuff, then of course it's a great, especially for younger teams or indie startups, it's a great way to get your first product out there without taking as much of a risk.
Mm-hmm. And a publisher has more things to do than just giving the developer money, of course. They handle marketing, they handle quality assurance. Like they check if your game actually reaches the level of quality that it needs to be to even become a successful released game. And all these kind of infrastructure things. If you're still going for a Switch release, for example, they help you with the manufacturing of the actual physical game. And these are all things that happen. So a storefront like Epic can, of course, not provide that. But they do. I think they can help with marketing as well, especially since it's inside of their ecosystem already.
I mean, for most indie projects or startup projects, the development costs batch of the overall costs will be significantly higher than the marketing budget. So having that covered from a source that isn't yourself is still pretty good, even though they won't take care of marketing as much as other publishers would do. And one thing they can offer is having like a promoted or featured store placement. Now that a lot of people use the launcher, of course, they can place your game somewhere in the forefront of the store, and then of course you get exposure.
Prominently with maybe animated GIFs, and other games do not have that. All ways to make your game stand out. Sometimes you get these Steam pop-ups of ads for games and they are animated and you're like, what? Why is this animated? This looks cool as hell. And then you click it and then they already generated an authentic click just because it was animated. Happened to me a million times. And yeah, that's how they do it.
That's something I am astonished not more stores generally do, even like the PSN store or the Xbox store or whatever, having animated or like moving pictures in place of their covers. I mean, covers are so stationary, and of course they stem from having physical boxes back in the day, cover art. Why is cover art still stationary?
Yeah.
Like, or static, not stationary. So, I mean, I can understand that if your own product shouldn't be this focus of the attention or center of the attention, then you can't do it. But your exclusives, so make them stand out, like you just said, it's like a genius move. Why are not more stores doing this?
That's a good question, because probably most stores don't allow you to display animated images. And I think that's a missed opportunity. Also, user experience. You don't want users to get nauseous because every cover is moving and then suddenly it's not coherent in its user experience anymore. But I do see why. Yeah, I don't know. I like to pimp my libraries. With the company, we changed from something like Trello to a management or a project management software, task management software that's called Codex. And they, for example, allow you to upload animated GIFs and animated backgrounds and all that animated stuff. And then we love to pimp our shit, right? So that's not a paid plug, by the way. It's just cool that you can put animated backgrounds onto everything. But on the other hand, now that we have everything animated, sometimes I think like, man, this would really be more understandable and readable if it wasn't all animated from. It's our fault, of course, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, you of course shouldn't overdo it, and this such a storefront or such a project organization structure shouldn't be overloaded with these moving images. And I think the best stores that are using this kind of system, like even thinking or going beyond the games industry, of course there are other stores like, I don't know, Amazon or some electronic shops that are using the system, always have the storefront curated in a form and some editorial board, not editorial board, like some editors sitting there and putting thought into how the stuff is being placed on the storefront. Of course, it's also already happens with the static content, but I think you can avoid an overload situation where the attention is being stolen from each other by a bunch of competing GIFs, however you want to call it. You can easily avoid that situation, I think, if you have an editor.
Yeah, but then people will feel like they're being treated differently. If one company, Go Game Studio, is allowed animated GIFs, then of course all others want to have animated as well, and then blah blah blah, and suddenly everything is you're in a situation as the guy offering the store that is offering the feature that they have to make selections based on their own decisions, and then that of course is like that's unfair towards some developers.
Of course, it's unfair, but like normal market competition in the advertising space is also regulated that way, that if you want to have a bigger ad space or a bigger banner, of course it costs more than a small banner on the side. So if you want to have the premium deluxe feature of having animated GIFs as your cover image, then of course maybe you have to pay a little bit more to reach that. status, or Sony is only doing it for their exclusives, and then they make their exclusives pop out a little bit more.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, as long as everyone gets the same chance of using it, even if it's through gated through high pricing, then go for it. I mean, that's how advertising has always worked. And before we close out the episode, I'd like to talk about our foresight, our prediction that in the last episode.
Now I'm interested.
Yes, of Artifact 2.0 coming. Like we were just talking about Artifact and that it needs a major revamp and that it has 80 players a week. And bam, 3 days after, they announced Artifact 2.0.
Yeah, they put out this blog post describing their plans going forward and also called it Artifact 2.0, which was a funny little thing because we also called it that way.
Yeah, so please always listen into the Industry Idiots for the newest leaks.
Yeah, Industry Idiots leaks certified. So it come.
New subtopic.
Yeah, new subtopic. I like that sound of that. Industry Idiot leaks sponsored by no one except our sophisticated leak knowledge.
Yeah, we're not sellouts. The moment we sell out, we'll let you know. If we start plugging like men's shaving products or something like this, we have been bought.
Totally unrelated topics.
Yeah.
And not something disguised as a discussion point. Yeah.
All right, but I think we're coming to an end. Thank you guys for listening in, even though it's super late here. It's almost midnight. And we had crazy days today, both of us, and
especially you. Sorry for reminding you again.
That's okay. I mean, I do martial arts or boxing as my sport anyway, so it wasn't bad. Okay, I dodged the thing, so that's that.
If you want to follow us or keep in touch with us, just go to Instagram or Twitter. On Instagram, it's at Industry Idiots. On Twitter, we are at Idiots Industry, and we're also, if you want to follow us on Apple or Spotify, you can do that too. So you get the latest episode, and we would like to hear from your feedback and let us always know what you think of the latest episodes, or how we can improve our chill gaming and hangout session. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and also feature requests, topic requests, favorite games. Check out the Patreon and write us a funny review. Everything you can, all of these things are essentially you supporting the show. So don't need to feel bad if you can't do one of the things. We're happy for anything you're doing. So thank you very much, especially for making us, as we said last week, part of your weekly routine. Means a lot. We would have never thought that we just hit a milestone, right? 300 downloads. And we, 6 weeks ago when we started this, we never would have thought that so many ears were actually gonna listen to us. So thanks.
I didn't expect it going over 50 downloads at all. And it's 6 times the figure I aimed for, let's say that. But it's crazy. Thanks for the support.
Yeah, appreciate it. And with that, bye.
Bye.